Hello, we're waiting on Charles to come in. Yeah, it's not showing you yet.
Liz, we're backstage.
Your front stage, front stage now. Let me get the sound off now if I can get it going.
It says we're backstage.
No, you're front stage now.
Did you not hear me?
You're front stage now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I was playing this. Hello, welcome to another episode of Child Abuse Awareness with Darlene J. Clark. A special guest today, again, is Charles Rogers, aka Blackstone Lawyer, and his buddy that's witness to a lot of this stuff as well, Eric Kiss. Let me start up with that. I really like the fact about how you rename, and I let you choose whatever titles that you have. Are y'all able to see the comments too? Have y'all clicked up to be able to read what people have to say? Charles?
Go right in your comments.
Trying to get there.
Yeah, when you go to comments, you can
Yeah,
tell everybody.
we're getting on comments
Okay.
turned on. We're still getting it, actually.
Okay, well, that's good. Thank you so much for coming in and read the wind. And thank you, Charles Rogers, and also Eric.
Well, thank you, but
Thank you, darling.
And I wonder why you chose this name, the Apple Dumplin Mafia. Would you like to explain to everybody?
yeah, I figured that was when I heard on the Summer Wells case. Um, I remember the bunch up there in North Carolina who called themselves the Cornbread Mafia, and
Yeah, they even said that on Dr. Phil. I remember that.
mm, and they were disbanded. They they disbanded back in the 1999 over the situation up there with Eric Rudolph.
People might have thought that they disbanded well before then, but there's been books and stuff that's written on it, and I'm sure there's some people that's still going around and hush hush type of thing that still goes around by that name.
Well, I'm still getting an echo in this. You said needed to do something to turn down the volume or something.
The volume over there at YouTube, make sure that your volume, the sound, or just close off YouTube. Close the YouTube window. That would help it a lot too. And if he's got Facebook Messenger open, he needs to close that as well because he's got that video. To close out Facebook and YouTube, and it should be fine.
Okay, just keep this conversation going.
Yes.
Okay, close them out. All right.
Thank you.
Is that? But I think I did it right there.
Is that a lot better now?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, that's good.
Okay, yeah. Thank you everybody for coming on and joining in with this chat here. And um, now it's not repeating itself on me. So, um, some of the criminal activities that Eric Rudolph and his partners up there in North Carolina, as far as the drug business of methamphetamine and marijuana, um, illegal gambling, and of course what we call human trafficking today. I explained before in the previous um, previously in the interviews that after the stuff went down in 1999, or during my confrontation with Eric Rudolph, the people that had any dealings with him and his colleagues, they broke away. So the situation, or the name that Don Wells brought up, in the Summer Wells case, is he's still referring to the bunch that was tied in with Eric Rudolph. Well, that would be his buddies over there in Murphy. Really not in as much of anyone up in the area like Bryson City, except for the two brothers I mentioned before, would be the only ones close to that proximity of the Tennessee line in that area up there toward Rogersville and Newport, because they're not far from Cherokee or Robbinsville, North Carolina.
Yeah, that was, I looked it up at Wikipedia, read more on the Cornbread Mafia, and also there was the Dixie Mafia was sometimes called the Cornbread Mafia as well.
Well,
And
that
then and then there was also another one that's even further south, and that one really got my attention. It was called the State Line Mafia, and
yeah,
that was in Phoenix City, Alabama.
yeah, and that was also some of that crowd was tied in there because Phoenix City's not that far from Columbus, Georgia. That's the problem.
Right.
And Columbus has been another transport place for deep state human trafficking operations, just as much as Athens. There's always been rumors of these underground tunnel system um, in Athens to North Carolina, um, where they can transport humans underground. The Georgia Guidestones, of course, we know they destroyed their own Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah, they thought by doing that, nobody could go and read that kind of stuff to have the evidence against them, so to speak. But, there's plenty of people that's got the history on knowing what it said.
Well, yes, and when you place together everything that I've covered in the previous interviews, you'll see exactly what their agenda was then, and which remains the same today. It's just you got people like, I don't want to say too many names, but of course, people like Elon Musk, who've been behind the scenes, doing his part to
Yeah,
get it.
we're going to bring him up how he came into your equation a little bit. But if you will go ahead and explain that, it's still about the Apple Dumpling Gang, because you said something about
Mhm.
that it reminded you of the comedy, and so to speak, like the Apple Dumpling Gang. And then, so, you know what I'm saying?
Well, it's like the perks that I've discussed before. John Ramsey getting his butt whooped by that 11-year-old blonde up there in West Virginia. Um, you know,
I forgot to
you
remove
got
your
to remember all
shoes.
things that I'm mentioning here. Okay, these are my accusations. even in the court of law, these are my accusations, are going to be my accusations, have been my defense in the um, Roger Dance case in Fulton County State Court, and my responses to his frivolous libel action Casey Levy filed on his behalf. But it's just these people and their plan. Okay, it's what works against them because again they're cursed. They, I guess, with a balance in life of being what we call pig farmer mathematicians, because they do things without looking forward to the unforeseen consequences that which can occur that they think will never occur as long as they stick together as a group. But everything's blowing off the lid now about the Epstein case, and you know you remember the movie with Don Knotts and Tim Conway,
Yeah, the
the
apple dumpling gang. Yes.
Apple Dumpling Gang. So when you're talking about hearing stuff out of Don Wells, that kind of like throws me the hunch. Well, apparently Don Wells knows a little bit more about the area besides the missing of his daughter. Um, because as a parent, um, anyone close to you will reveal to you what happened to you. The cornbread mafia. Well, I kind of find that a little amusing because when you say cornbread mafia, you're talking about some a group that once upon a time was engaged in, like I said, illegal activities with Eric Rudolph and his colleagues in North Carolina, and really in the underage girls 16, because the age of consent in North Carolina is 16 unless it's um, the child has been emancipated by the court, um, and if anyone has any relations with her after emancipation, I think as young as 14 years of age, it's not a felony if they get caught having relations with her.
Yeah, that's what's so sad about that. Whenever they do go like that, become emancipated. I
Ma'am?
said that's what's so scary about that. When they do become emancipated, thinking that they can take care of themselves, and then they get victimized by these people. She's in a world of trouble.
Well, yeah, I remember one went to work up there at the Waffle King one time um, when I was working there part
It's in
time.
Marietta, Georgia, right?
Ma'am?
That's in Marietta, Georgia, right?
No, ma'am, Murphy, North Carolina.
Oh, that's in Murphy, North Carolina. Okay, I'm just trying to make
Yeah.
sure because there's so many different places where
Yeah,
there's.
I think they still have the location in Blue Ridge open, and the one in Murphy, it's franchised now. Charlie Crowder, the owner, I don't know if he's still kicking or not, but they went to a large number of restaurants down to um, just two. And I hate to say it, anything derogatory against my buddy Dennis, but Dennis, that the problem with that is Dennis trained all the cooks to put 2 ladles of low melt on the hash browns.
Uh,
When cooks, grill operators like I was when I worked in the fast food industry for Waffle House, okay, would only put a half a ladle in the hash browns, and I think that was their downfall. Just upon that, because who wants a bunch of grease in their food? And that was the downfall of the Waffle King.
Can, can you
But they
believe it?
were,
Can you believe it? I already got stricken at you, Facebook and ownership link. We ain't shared no kind of ownership links, nothing, except for what was provided here at StreamYard, which I'm paying for that program, and they're already saying that there's a little bit of restriction they're taking off of my thing because of they own part of that. I'm like, excuse me.
yeah.
I just now got
Um,
that notification from you, Facebook doing that crap.
yes, ma'am. But they actually Dennis had worked this girl, and I was working with her like one of her first nights, and here she was like 14, 15 or something like that, and had been emancipated. And suddenly here she is, being overly friendly and all that with me when I first started working with her.
Yes.
And I'm sitting there, and you know, she even, bless her heart, she even told me that her grandmother told her if she was to ever get hold of AIDS, just take a tablespoon of bleach and it would get rid of it. And so I wound up saying something. I forgot what it was. It was real true to her that pretty much changed that. She really didn't want to say much to me after that, but um, once they're emancipated, they can work. Um, as an adult, because that's what they are, is emancipated as an adult. Pretty much, if you do get in trouble, it's a misdemeanor if you're over age or something like that. And, in states like Georgia now, age of consent is 18, and 16 if her boyfriend is 18. Um, you know, in those type of relationships, anything 19 and older, they could be charged with. They changing it to child molestation. Used to be statutory rape. But there's people, because of the age of consent laws in the state of Georgia being really 18, there's been people that's been stating that emancipation of active female girls the age of 16 should be available to where guys don't spend as much time in prison as they would without the emancipation like other states have.
That's
Uh,
sickening.
well, you still got that element, that goes back in the old days. There was times that, you know, women, young females, as young as 12, married off
Exactly.
and started families. Things were harder back in those times. The lifespan was a whole lot shorter. If you lived to get into your 50s, you were doing good.
Yeah, it still bothers me whenever I did that child marriages things here in Tennessee. Um, you usually find that the young age that's married these older people is usually a girl at the age of, that young. But this was a 20-something-year-old woman that married an 11-year-old boy here in Tennessee, and this was it was after the 2000. I can't remember exactly what year it was, and I cannot believe Tennessee went ahead and let this 20-something-year-old marry this 11-year-old boy.
Well, you sit there and you scratch your head, because this is the Bible Belt. This is another reason why I want to make a figure. Well, let's give somebody to smile about, just the title, and point out the some of the perks in this mess. And See how bad that their terrorist organization messed up in the 1990s for being, pig farmer mathematicians.
Right.
Because there was really nobody that the FBI really could have sent up there under any other circumstances with the capacity to pretty much stand a chance of shutting down their operation. If it had not been for the fact that at that baseball game in 1974 between my elementary school there in Morganton, Georgia, and Murphy, North Carolina, when I accused Mike Cook of what he was going to do in the future, didn't mean he had to go through and do exactly what I accused him and his family of going to do. But
Yeah, it's a good thing that you had noticed them bending down and on that field, and they're like, "What are they doing?" You said they're planting they're fixing to detonate a bomb.
well, that was at that baseball game at ball ground. Well, that happened at that you know little league baseball game in ball ground, Georgia. I was told I would be shot on the spot if I showed up over there and messed up that attack. Well, what did I do? I showed up anyway. You
At the
know,
Dumplin gang, and they didn't do nothing to you.
well, they were chasing me down there in lower Alabama when my brother and Roger Nance and that time that Judge McLaughlin figured he'd come down there and take care of the matter. His automobile became one of the four statistics of the transportation that got totaled out down there.
Yeah, and y'all remember this is a judge, and this is a crooked judge. He came originally from Knoxville, Tennessee, before he became a judge.
In
And
Cobb
Charles
County,
had seen
Georgia.
him, huh?
In Cobb County, Georgia, man. And that's another, I think it's a proper name because the same automobile that he totaled out in Evergreen, Alabama, I became a witness against him and Sheriff Bill Hudson, Cobb County, and the Bentleys for a homicide. Witness, in the in the happening, on the back of the school bus on my way home from middle school. And that's the same automobile that he totaled out down in Evergreen, Alabama, 1970 Buick Centurion. When he totaled it out into the brick mailbox of Grady Rawls, the original or the founder owner of Grady Rawls and Sons Construction, who are the DOT road highway contractors for Alabama in the lower region, just like C.W. Matthews is for North Georgia.
Hold on a second. I want to say thank you so much, Truth. And we're trying to get more people, and you can share your story with my friend Charles Rogers sometimes, and he could probably try to help you with that too.
Mm-hmm.
See what Truth is in the rabbit hole has said.
Well, this was the nickname we started calling them in 1999. Whenever really the boys of the the Cornbread Mafia, the ones that wasn't supportive of the stuff they were doing to children, broke away. They were like, we don't want any part of this. You know, we just your regular old mountain renegades. You know that when we get sent to prison, we kill these guys in prison if we can get our hands hold of them. So
You see,
that's
yeah, it
that
is.
that's these guys disbanded back then. So when Don Wells is saying, um, you know, the Cornbread Mafia, he's talking about that bunch over there in Murphy, Marble, North Carolina. Um, there was one boy up there in Robbinsville, North Carolina. His family made the decision to allow him to be eliminated because he got tied in with Epstein and Rudolph and that bunch. You know, human trafficking of 16-year-old girls from, North Carolina.
Right.
You
Hey,
know,
Charles. Truth in the Rabbit Hole has said she's trying to expose her family too, because her family's from Knoxville, Tennessee to Atlanta. David C. Rowe, that's with Buddy, Gene Allen, Orkin, IBM.
wow. Okay. Um,
Here's what she says right here, or he says, I don't know if it's a male, female. I can't really tell right now. But, um, you read it? Can you read the screen right there? You said you wanted to people to be able to come to you and tell you maybe there's going to be a connection.
uh-huh.
And here's your one right here. Truth is in the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can look them up at Facebook under Charles Rogers. Okay.
Yeah, that's another thing. Is this is what's beautiful for like the victims of the Oklahoma City
Oh, thank
bombing.
you.
Um, Even the victims who got injured and suffered trauma from the Centennial Park attack, they can get attorneys and they can reach out to me, and I can get with them and provide them with the evidence that their clients need to get the real compensation that they deserve, as well as the city of Atlanta to be paid back for the money that it had to fork out to the victims from the Centennial Park attack. And of course, the victims that got injured at the other side lounge, you know, and even, the new women's healthcare clinic um, can sue it. We really need to, and at this point, go ahead and do it now. That's why anyone who has a friend or a loved one who are a victim of this organization, I don't care if they're a sibling of one of the victims of the Charlie Chopoff case, to the Alphabet murders, to the Oakland County child murders,
Right.
um, to the Atlanta child murders, um, to the West Memphis 3 homicides.
Yeah, and you
Um,
had told us before that you did also see Epstein at one of the restaurants before with an underage girl, right? That Eric Rudolph was
yes,
supposed to
ma'am.
be
That was
given.
the Huddle House. That was at the Huddle House in Blairsville, Georgia, the day after the Centennial Park attack. I also saw Epstein again in 2005 after had my little meeting running with Lynn Wood when we had our little falling out down there. When he lost his $650,000 retainer with Richard Jewell, because Rick really didn't want any of the money that the FBI was going to give him once he found out the major role that he played in helping me, stop, the 30 terrorist attacks that he unwittingly and unknowingly, but loved it when he found out, was able to help me stop those attacks. And that's how really we kind of became buddies, because of um, we worked close together after um, actually finally getting to meet in the courthouse there in Birmingham after Rudolph entered his plea deal to return to Atlanta and plea out and get sentenced there. So, um, they did so much mess ups, and what they did, what they really did, they underestimated God, is what they did. And
Right.
because it's humanly impossible for me to be able to accomplish what I accomplished, in addition to defend myself the way I've had to defend myself on multiple occasions and do the damage to the people who attacked me, that even resulted in one of them dying from his injuries.
Right.
Um, you know,
Thank
your
God for
average,
that, for, you being able to defend yourself. And like that time when you and Beth Ramsey and what was her boyfriend's name?
Matt Darrington,
Matt
Matt,
Darrington and that other girl, the, what was her name?
if I remember correctly, her name was Paula. Um,
Okay. And y'all had rescued those two boys out of the Bentley Farms.
mhm.
And you had told her not to trust John Andrew, and um, so she went and trusted John Andrew, and y'all went and helped him escape out of that thing. But it was wrong. It was so bad what had happened. The two boys were shot, and the bullet almost got you too. You heard the little thing go by your ear. So thank God you're still around too.
Yeah, I stopped dead in my tracks, and it sounded like a bumblebee sound, thunk, like that. And so I was shot at. Now, whether my cousin Robert intentionally missed or accidentally missed, that's not what's important to me. I don't care. I know a shot was fired, okay, and he
Right.
missed. He didn't miss the other boy he shot, and Bentley didn't miss the other boy. They both dropped one right after the other, and they were using silencers like they always use because Ed manufactures the silencers for the United States military.
Right.
But I want to reiterate, this is the same guy. He is his dad and his brother-in-law Jim Stubbs, same people I've been having problems with since 1972. And I don't think even some of their colleagues now at this point, being a half a century, still having to deal with, you know, crap because of them. I don't think even their colleagues are going to blame me at this point for standing up and saying, hey, enough is enough. It's
Right.
bad enough having to negotiate that deal to get that hydrogen bomb disarmed over there at Cook Ridge the night of January 28th, 1998.
And I thank you for that you had the fortitude to step up when Governor Hunt could not do that. It was the governor in North Carolina, right?
That is correct because everybody knew, including Hunter Biden and Jim Biden, everybody knew at that time, right, with the amount of Chinese troops that was here in the United States, that was, and all the training that the United States was doing for urban warfare. The UN troops that they had here training hard on our bases, that it was all perfect timing for a revolution slash racial civil war to pop up in this country, because those boys from foreign lands that was on our military bases wouldn't have looked at us as far as families looking out for each other, trying to defend each other, from what we would be deemed a, terrorist, government. I mean, a tyrannical government. When in fact, the deep state, they call it, the gridiron that was behind the whole thing with the Mossad. So when we say the apple dumpling mafia, let's just remember there's a little bit of sprinkle of kosher salt in there with it, because the 203 employees the gag orders issued over the June 19th, 1997 attempted truck bombing of the Home Depot corporate headquarters, all right, were, involved. Its very CEO and executives, including of marketing, Ron Brill, Arthur Blank's right hand guy. And, you know, I'll be a monkey's uncle if that's not Ron Brill after the Sandy Hook shooting out there. Because when there are what we call false flag operations,
Yes,
there's human life that is actually occurs. Now we know dang good and well there was children who were murdered in that elementary school,
exactly.
because these people have no regard for human life. They intended to wipe out 2/3 of the world population starting in the 1990s. Okay, so they have no regard for, children at baseball games, because, well, after my confrontation with Rudolph, and of course, that idiot brother of his, Daniel, it was really Daniel, um, in as much as it was Eric. Okay. Um, he was just as involved as his brother Eric. And really, some folks up there really believe that on Jamie, his homosexual brother, who's been living with the same boyfriend up in Manhattan up there since the 1990s, may have been involved more in the homicides of Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers than Eric. But nobody can dispute that question that he asked me, and how he lied to his own mother and his sister about it.
I think it's sickening that question he asked you. I mean, it's a trigger warning, y'all. It's really, it make you sick if y'all, I'm sure some of y'all heard it already on what Eric Rudolph had actually asked Charles Rogers. It is very sickening. And Charles went to tell Eric's mother, um, and then Eric tried to lie about it. I
Yeah, I lied to
can only say
her.
it out of your mouth. I'd rather you say it, not me, since it's your story. So.
Well, we'll just say sucking the blood out of that boy's genitalia.
Yeah,
Um,
he asked, had you ever done that?
yeah, so no, I cannot honestly say that I have. Um, I have almost been put in that position um, before, I will admit. But what can you do whenever the people that are into this type of stuff really runs the state of Georgia from behind the scenes and other states and places, and they've been able to maintain their control of Washington so far through their manipulations and tactics, because they're very, very, very ruthless.
What really got me also is seeing that picture of Rosalind Carter standing beside John Wayne Gacy. That picture's forever going to be engraved in my mind, you know?
Well, yeah, and you know, so many of these people. It's all political. It's political. Um, every bit of it, and it's all for world domination. Well, who wants to be dominated, governed, and and ruled Okay, by a doggone lunatic, you can't trust around your little daughter, much less around your little boy. I mean, who wants to be governed by any such as that? Who wants to walk into the courtrooms, okay, for, speeding down the road or, running a red light, you know, um, spitting on the sidewalk, so to speak. While these people out here sitting on the benches, some of them are wearing police uniforms. Um, some of them, work in the pharmaceutical industry, the lumber industry, oil industry. I mean, you name it. You know, it's like Jim Jordan and James Comer, just like they said. Over 44 CEOs of corporations. We heard it right out of their mouths. Okay. So you're hearing it from more than just me. Okay. That
And
that these that I know good and well are involved. These are some major corporations. You're talking brands like Coca-Cola. You're talking Home Depot.
exactly, yes,
People
because
in
they
North
try to involve
Carolina.
their, they're part of. You say, okay, Epstein is more for money laundering, that kind of thing, and child exploitation, sexual exploitation of minors, and but there's terrorism, bombings, and all this that these people are doing as well. It's not just cut and dry sex trafficking. I mean, these are very bad criminals.
Well,
They keep getting away with it.
yeah, Fox Theater. They tried to have Fox Theater they own in Atlanta attacked with a truck bomb on Valentine's Day, 1997. So, you
And
know, that was
I want
stopped pretty much by Atlanta police. And
to, hey Charles, I want to let them know that you at one time had were asked when you was running an organization about um, trying to find which one was it, Operation Longwood, or was it another one? When you wanted, they asked you which one did you want to have arrested, the very first person
yeah, that
predator,
was
and you
that was Long Wine. And
okay,
I named that operation. People want to know, well, why Long Wine? I said, because I want them to get enough time in prison to sit there and whine about the prison sentence and the amount of time they're going to have to serve, okay, for sex trafficking children.
and so
Is
you
where the
mentioned
name Long Wine. I'm the one who named the operation. I'm the one who set up the operation um, with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
yes, thank you. And they
So
asked you which one you wanted them to go after first, and you specifically said John Ramsey, and they
that,
said he's untouchable, right?
well, actually, I remember I was incorrect on that. The first one was Ed Bentley Jr.
Oh, okay.
and they
He's up
wasn't going
here
to
on the
go after
screen
Ed
right now.
Jr.
People can see the
They said,
screen.
"Well, who else you want us to go after?" I said, "Well, John Ramsey." Well, we definitely ain't touching him. Who else? And I was like, I'm trying to remember that Jeffrey guy's name, Jewish guy. Him and his girlfriend. They used to hang around Eric Rudolph, and oh, you mean Jeff Epstein? Yeah, and Ghislaine, yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell. I said, yeah, Ghislaine. Um, I'd prefer to go after her, but really, I think you need to go after him first. I'll make him my next pick. Um, so y'all get to pick which of the two y'all want first, him or her. Well, we got the goods on him in Florida already. The police have already got complaints from some girls down there to where they're trying to figure out how. how to avoid that, but we could go ahead and have him picked up and face the other charges that we got him on also in other places like New York. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, go ahead and get him. They're like, well, they're going to do nothing but slap him on the wrist, the position that he's in. I said, well, that's exactly what I want the American people to see. Just exactly that. Because I figured if he was on the same page with me, that through their actions they would wind up exposing themselves. Um, and he couldn't disagree. So, of course, we got to see what they did. Um, he did turn around and he did cooperate and helped eliminate some of their competition. But I I am uncertain what happened to Ron Meeks, one of the coaches for the Atlanta Falcons, because the diary of the 13-year-old girl that we obtained in 2005 after my encounter with Ed Bentley out there at the um, cemetery where Beth, John Bonet, and Patsy Ramsey are buried at.
Right. If you can see your screen, you got a question right there.
Okay.
Here's wondering, can you please tell me why John Ramsey is untouchable?
Well, one, he's uh, former vice president of Lockheed Martin. Okay.
Which he was working out when he said he wasn't really working, and yes, he was working. He was the vice president or president over there at Lockheed, yeah. When John
Yeah, he
Bonet was
just,
murdered.
he said everybody ruined his reputation. Well, yeah, they ruined his reputation to the people who didn't know him. Okay, the people who know him already knew his reputation. You know, um, the when you're in cahoots with the people who make the silencers for the United States military, the people who build the aircraft, the fighter jets, the bombers and transport planes, general ones for the United States government, you could get away with anything you want to get away in this country. That is what it boils down to. I had Victor Hansen's daughter reach out to me 2 years ago.
Whose daughter?
Victor Hansen, another former DOD contractor.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That she believes was involved, um, was also involved in both the murder of John Benet Ramsey and was involved with John Ramsey in the Oakland County child murders.
And John Ramsey himself had told you that the that he laughed about killing Jill Robinson and said that he was going to kill John Bonet on the anniversary of Jill Robinson's death. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the Jill Robinson's what he talked about, what he did afterwards to Jill Robinson, or after what he and his friends did with her, that he took her out and near a police precinct and took her out of the car and shot her in the face, and that was the case that my brother Fred, Roger, and the other two technicians at the Leighton Graphics bursted out laughing too, like it was funny.
That's sickening for them all to laugh like that.
Yeah.
That is very criminal. And they really think that it was really funny that this child suffered and shooting her in the face.
I think they were wanting to test me to see how I'd react because my brother Fred knew that I'd wind up fighting this guy by the time it was all over with, even though I was still 17 years old.
But they went right after you trying to kill you after they divulged his information to you.
Well, not necessarily. See, I wasn't supposed to mention anything to Mr. Layton after he arrived. This was before Mr. Layton arrived. Um,
Yeah, because that's where he worked at before he went to Lockheed, right?
well, no, ma'am. He's when he designed the first he designed the microchip on computer hardware um, for a
John
local.
Ramsey did.
Yes, ma'am. Well, the United States government decided that they was going to shut down the production of mica in the United States in 1984. And so I'll emphasize this again. In 1983, they went to Kodak and they went to Polaroid. Okay, this is when Dale Montegraph did the big switch. He bailed ship from Kodak and jumped over to Polaroid because they were the two companies that told to come up with a high quality film that John Ramsey and his colleagues could develop for date, you know, storage of, court records and um, government documents and stuff like that on microfilm instead of microchip. So, of course, Polaroid was the company that
Charlene.
had the higher quality film, and um, they partnered up with IBM, General Electric, Home Depot, General Motors, of course, Bentley Enterprises, and of course, Bentley Law Group. They had their part of it, and Motorola. That's right, Motorola. All the big wigs with these companies teamed up with them, and they developed the microfilm technology with John Ramsey, and that got all the big, huge government contracts. The um, judicial system, the legislative. So he had plenty as far as the U.S. government to do with excess graphics. That
Plus,
even excess graphics would have had a hard time at that time being able to cover it all and get it out. So companies like Leighton Graphics, like here in Georgia, based out of Marietta at that time.
plus,
Um,
people got to know that it wasn't just started from John Ramsey. His own father was into trafficking too. That um, he helped with the North Fox Island. Is that the name of it?
yes, ma'am. The Brother Paul's summer camp and the resort there on Norfolk Island, that was Francis Duffield Sheldon.
Yeah, the ghost.
Ma'am?
Yeah, the ghost, the walking ghost.
No, The Walking
Oh,
Dead.
oh, the Walking Dead. Okay, yeah, because he
Dead
was
Zombie.
supposedly
Yeah.
dead
Supposed
over
to
there near
die.
the Netherlands, and it wasn't. He didn't. They faked it.
Well, he was supposed to have died over in New Amsterdam on July the 9th, 1996, but he was looking pretty healthy to me. There around September the 18th of 1996 in Murphy, North Carolina. So, he's buried. They're not far from Andrews, Highway 74. When he and Andrea Strassmeyer and Dave Holloway attempted to kill me. So he's
One is
buried there.
dogs.
They're buried in Elohim City. Um, because Robert Millar, he came out to claim all three of their bodies after him and his bunch was going to kill me. And they got out there and they were greatly outnumbered. People up there, they were ready to shoot it out with them if they thought they were going to kill me, and they would have. They'd killed every one of them. So they left Sheldon. They took the other two corpses and returned to Elohim City, and that's where their remains are still buried till this day. Which I heard they would threaten to remove the bodies and or remains and bury them elsewhere if I ever mentioned anything about it. So I just kept my mouth shut and let everybody else um, put the word out before me. You know, so that's why folks know that where Holloway and Strassmeyer were buried at. You know, so there's your connection right there to Ramsey and the Oklahoma City bombing again, and the Oakland County child murders, and you know, I mean, it's there. You anybody can Google search Francis Duffield Sheldon, the North Fox Island pedophile ring, and you know, and it still always reverts you over to the Oakland County child murders. So Jay Ramsey was the one who helped Sheldon get the funding, get the grants to build the landing strip. He was the czar of the uh, Michigan Aeronautics Commission. You did not get a permit to build an airport unless he approved it. And if he didn't approve it, you didn't get an airport in the state of Michigan. And when you got the permit, he was the inspector, and everything had to be up to his standards before he would approve it. He was a decorated World War II pilot, but as we see, even heroes, war heroes, um, can be the type of people that we don't want in society. Because of the monster. If he wasn't the monster that his son became, well, he was the reason for it. So, and you know, that's what I got out of Beth too. Even though that Jay helped her mother relocate and everything set up where she could get a divorce, I think Jay did that more to help John get her the children away, because if anything happened to Beth or Melinda, John Andrew, or something like that, you know, back in the 70s when they were, you know, John Andrew was probably, you know, knee high to a grasshopper, as the old timers used to put it. You know, but Beth being, you know, nine, when she, caught her dad starting to do to Melinda what he's, how her abuse started. And that's pretty much what ended the marriage between John and Lucinda. That's what I got out of Beth. Well, really more out of Matt, because she was more ashamed to talk about it, that she really wanted her fiance and I, you know, talk man to man with her there, of course, and that's what we did. So they knew about the plans already to attack the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building in 1991. This false narrative about Timothy McVeigh told to go out and ride around and find a federal building attack, and just by chance decided to choose the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building, is still part of the false narrative of the Oklahoma City bombing investigation. Because the plans to attack that federal building, for all I know, could have been pre-planned the moment after I accused Mike Cook at that baseball game of what he was going to do in the future. I don't know when they decided that they was going to go through with that.
A
Like
while
I
ago,
said, he didn't have to. He didn't have to. He didn't have to confirm my prediction. He could have not done it and made me look like a complete idiot and fool. But he,
right.
you know, but that was the advantage that I had that nobody else had. Okay, was that stunt right there. And if you don't believe in God, I feel sorry for you, because I wouldn't have known to ask him that question if there was no God. So um, I hope that answers a lot of people's questions, that we are part of creation and we have a creator, and who wants us to revere him, and that's what he wants. So anyone who works in forensic science and works with DNA, they funny thing about that is a lot of them be atheists until they start actually working with DNA and realizes it's just way too complex to be formed. There's just some Big Bang theory and all of that. So they eventually, convert to either Christianity or um, you know Islam, or you know a one creator belief culture once they work in forensic science with DNA. So um, what I did when I figured with the Summer Wells case, and there's nothing being any more new developments or anything like that in the amount of time that has expired since then. We look at the similarities of the Delphi murder case. You've got a sister and a dad. Sister dropped them off and went back, didn't show up, and the dad, went up, you know, pick them up and couldn't find them. You start to wonder, you know, um, if that parent, okay, and that sibling, okay, were involved. Um, because even though my dad did not condone anything that my brother Fred did, okay, there are parents out there that do, and it's normally whenever the son does like the dad does, and but that's not the case with my dad and brother. That is the case with people like Jay and John Ramsey. Um, because Jay was way up there in the aviation industry, and pretty much paved the path for John to be able to come in and go higher than just being a pilot and inspector of building some airports. Jay's position actually got him all the way up to Lockheed Martin. So everybody wants to sit there and try to solve the John Benet Ramsey murder.
Right.
Okay, well, if you want to solve the John Benet Ramsey murder, you have to look elsewhere besides her murder. Once you look at all the other crimes that has implicated her daddy, okay. In addition, I know this from what I experienced with a guy, and also after meeting his oldest daughter Beth. But John Andrew and five of his buddies almost got plastered over there at this the place tavern there in Marietta, Georgia, because they were following me around, and I figure I'd have some buddies in that establishment that could help back me up against the guys in these vehicles who were following me around, and it turned out to be John Andrew. So when I say to victims that want some, additional compensation, for their sufferings and, and losses, well, that would include Burke and Melinda Ramsey if they ever decided they wanted to join the lawsuits, including suing their own daddy. Um, because that would have to be, traumatic losing a sibling and you know,
You see what
and
read
John
what
doesn't even have a problem with fingers being pointed at Burke, right? As long as they don't point fingers at John Andrew.
yeah, they can point fingers and say Burke, and yet Burke's innocent. People need to quit pointing the finger at him.
Yeah, people need to let up on Burke. I mean, I tell people this all the time. When you look at Lacey Frady, Levi Frady's twin sister, and you look at Burke Ramsey, here she is as, beautiful bombshell, um, brunette, you know, here's Burke, just, young, handsome, you know, he suffered trauma out of this, but, you know, and I don't know if there's any resentment out of Lacey or not about, her parents' involvement in her twin brother's homicide. But just because they both have a lot in common, okay, in looks, appearance, and being, victims, really burnt a whole lot more than I could say about Lacey Frady. Because once her dad got that $40 million inheritance, around 10 days after his homicide, uh, I believe that Milton gave her brother's share of the inheritance that he got, and and you know, so I always thought they would make the picture perfect couple, him and her, you know, Burke and Lacey, but I've had Milton Brady admit to his involvement in his son's homicide and the West Memphis Three. Milton Brady is like John Ramsey. They're two peas in the same pod.
Right.
All right, and the only difference is their age. One is just as guilty as the other on just about anything that they've done because these cases are very well linked. The signs are out there to the public, um, and it's actually right there in your face.
It's like
When
also when you look in when I was doing the Oakland child murders, and what car did I see? I seen that blue Gremlin.
hmm You mean the blue Gremlin?
Uh huh.
Yeah.
It's one of the cars that's evidence, and that's was you said Doug McRae had driven a vehicle like that.
Yes, ma'am. He had one with a 304 in it, V8.
So it kind of knocked me off guard. Like, there's a vehicle. That's one of them that they're looking for. Is a
Yeah.
but
They had,
I bet they have people told them that hey, these people are involved, and they're just brushing it off to the side.
well, it's like that movie, There Will Be Blood. It's played by Daniel Day Lewis. And it's one of those movies that it's kind of long drawn out story, but it's got a good, you know, it's got a good ending to it to those who appreciate um, entertainment because of the end of the movie. I don't like to ruin it for anyone who has never seen it before, but it boils down to you can read the headings on it. This oil tycoon, become morally bankrupt, you know.
Right.
And when you watch the movie and at the end of it, and you just see the excellent job that Mr. Lewis did in that movie, portraying this guy. Um, because that's one thing we say about him is he's always been an excellent actor. The movies he's played in from, The Last of the Mohicans and, of course, in that movie. But, even in that movie, in the dialogue was how this, tycoon would stoop down and sexually abuse his son's, you know, female best friend, you know, that was the same age as his son. And, these, money changes people. There's no doubt about that. But some people, it just causes them to lose their morals in the entirety. They get that money, they can go out and they can do things that they've never been able to do before. And normally, whenever they get that kind of money, guess who comes running around and wanting some? The hounds. And next thing you know, they get crossed up with the wrong people. And next thing you know, they wind up losing their morals. They get morally bankrupt and sometimes blackmailed and dragged in. It's just, it's a vicious cycle. Um, you know, um, I had nobody. I used to work in heating and air. Okay. He was a former drug dealer. Then he turned around and he won a lottery. Well, I gave him plenty of money to open up businesses and dealership, used car a lot, I should say, um, to making money and all. And what happened one day, he switched cars with his crack dealer and wound up getting stopped in his crack dealer's car. You
Hey,
know,
a while ago, I had mentioned about Elon Musk.
what about him?
When how he basically helped you out that
Y-
time.
yes, ma'am. That was during the construction of the Avalon in Alpharetta.
Yes.
He has his office dealership location there. You can walk in and order you a Tesla there. and his building was among the first that was built in 2013. And I was told, um, I was really confronted by my brother Fred, um, that I needed, that I, quote, better go to um, Alpharetta. Someone important wanted to talk to me. And so I knew with him coming around, lurking around, and telling me that I better go meet with whoever this was because I never was told who it was till I got there. But I wound
Okay.
up having to go out to Alpharetta and meet with this person. Well, you're going over here, and it wound up turning up to be Elon Musk. And we had our talk, and some of it had to do with Epstein. Um, like anybody else, he had been deceived. He had been lied to. I mean, this is something I've always kept running into people that was, you know, involved in some activities, monetary, um, bit, activities with these people. Literally wasn't as clear on everything like he thought he was. So of course he realized that he had been misinformed, and they had a group waiting down the road there at Milton Parkway, Highway 400 for me, waiting for me to pull out and um, my workman and leave, and they were going to follow me, and of course be another chase. Probably into another big, attempt to chase me into another big truck.
Right. They're really good
So
about that.
whenever I brought out to him, how I got dragged in, and he found out that he was misinformed about me. He told me that these guys were waiting for me down by the bridge. So when I pulled out, what their intentions were. So we had an additional 5-minute talk before I walked down there. I didn't get in my vehicle and pulled out. I walked down there, and I told him, I said, "Well, this will give you the opportunity to determine if you want me alive or dead." Because he had the same concern that I did over what was happening to the little children. Even though the guy's been married a lot of times, he he expressed his concern over what was happening to preppy prepubescent children, and I was like, "Well, I'm definitely on the same page with you there." Because he wanted to figure out a way to expose it, really without it, directly, reflecting back to him, really until the right time would come out, which I believe now is the time. Is why he's coming out now. Um, but really, he appears more to be a warrior against it than involved in it. And I know that him and President Trump had their little, you know, spout last week, but I've never seen any evidence that would support Donald Trump has ever been to Epstein Island. And even if Elon Musk did, I'm confident Elon wanted to go out there and scope things out for himself. Or at least that's what I gathered from my conversation when I met him in 2013. So there are people out there that part of the Billionaire Boys Club. Um, I call it. Um, even though they've been complicit to an extent. They've been waiting for the right moment to get the things exposed to the American people, and that's what we're seeing now on social media. Um, is his share of trying to expose it. Um, you got so many people out there trying to expose um, their share of it, and it's coming to light. It's getting to where it's going to be impossible for these people to identify their identities from the public anymore. And once it travels through the world, there's really not any place in the world that they're really going to be able to go to and be safe. I mean, they could try it down there in Komodo Island with those lizards down there. Um, it's kind of like I told, Matt McRae that day when I had to get truck my number 14 out of Murphy there on the 29th of January after I was appointed by Governor Jimmy Hunt to do that deal. Um, I believe getting that truck bomb out of Western Murphy that afternoon, um, probably saved right around 350 lives. There's a lot of people that showed up to Murphy that afternoon once they found out there was this caravan of FBI coming in the area, to look for um, Rudolph for the attack of the new women's healthcare clinic. So a lot of people up there didn't even know that they tried to attack the FBI field office. Um, until that caravan of FBI came up there.
Thank you.
They couldn't hide that. They couldn't hide that from everybody up there,
Hey,
And the
Charles,
boys,
right? Hey, Charles, can you write that down, or maybe Eric write down what Reek the Whirlwind had written on this, what she had said? Ice Wide Shut, Kubrick, Wade, John Bonet story in there.
uh-huh. Yeah, they don't want always, it's like my name's and identity. John has always brought up was people out in Colorado. You never hear John mention anybody from Marietta. Oh look at John Mark Carr. Yeah, I mean of course, whenever John Mark Carr popped up, but good grief, that was his buddy's son. You know, but outside of that, you never heard John Ramsey mention looking at anyone in the direction of Marietta, Georgia. Because if you look at Marietta, you have to look at Murphy, North Carolina, because him and Patsy, they had that house on Lake Chattooga.
Right.
Even though they didn't use it, stayed with, Big Ray Duncan and Jeff Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The girls were sexually abused over there on Lake Chattooga. And all I'm needing is confirmation that Levi Frady was in the Cub Scouts. And once I get that confirmation, then we've got the case to help the Boy Scouts case up there. It should be enough to even help the victims and the Boy Scouts receive compensation once we go after these people's assets. So there's plenty of wealth out there. As the communists call redistribution of wealth. Well, yeah, we're going to redistribute it to the victims of their child sex trafficking operations and terrorist attacks and what have you. These people, they're billionaires. Donald Trump um, has admitted during his presidential campaigns that he had got involved in some shenanigans with these people, and which makes perfect sense when we look at the Panama Papers, because if you're going to play big business in the United States the way the others do it, it was going to do it in the same manner as they would, just maybe not with the same people and not being involved to the magnitude of the others.
And I want to ask you something too. Some people try to accuse you of being Semitic.
Well, I figured that would be the next card trick, since they always, you know, use something else to try to, make me look bad, slander my name, um, smear my reputation. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them out there to, to try to say that anti-Semitic, for speaking out against the Mossad that was involved with, the terrorists and the deep state on this stuff, because this is exactly what we're dealing with.
I don't care if you're Jew or you're Catholic or what you are, whether you're white, black,
Well,
Native American, anything. If you're messing with kids, you ought to be in trouble.
well, you know, I was raised in the Baptist church, both Southern and Independent, and which I don't have beliefs that the Baptists do, and haven't since 1973. Um, but I got my Jewish lineage through my maternal grandmother, because that's what the Jewish people do, is they go in, and you don't really get the lineage through your family name. A lot of times it comes through your mother and her mother. And that's what happened in my case, my grandmother being a Smith. Um, but even you got people like John Ossoff, who's Jewish and doesn't support Israel. You got other people out there that are Jewish that does not support Israel. But we got a lot of these Christian Zionists who believe that we're supposed to support Israel, that they're God's chosen people, and all of that. And really, I would like to see some valid proof that these people are even really Jewish. Okay, even more so, I like to prove that they're the only ones who can be God's people, because I don't believe that's the case, and I never have. Um, Supremacy is supremacy, whether it's Jewish, white, black, um, Asian, Hispanic, whether it comes in all colors, black, blue, red, pink, or purple. Um,
Right.
you know, Lineage doesn't make a difference to me, because I've got friends, you know, that I grew up with that were Jewish, and I do anything in the world just like I would for, any Christian, or, anyone else at that, if there's a situation that comes regarding life and death, I'm not going to discriminate. I'm not, I'm not going to, I'm not going to sit there and watch someone murder a Muslim, Jewish, a Jewish person. Now if they decide they want to, kill one of these guys, I don't think I'd sit there and try to intervene, but just sit there and witness and testify for them in the court of law, and hope they would get acquitted. You know, but there was Jewish targets. If I was anti-Semitic, why would I stop the attacks on those Jewish schools there in Atlanta that was on the target list. Um, the morning of January 17th, 1997, when they hit the Northside Family Planning Services there in Sandy Springs in Atlanta. Um, DeVry Institute of Technology was really the main target that morning. The abortion provider, he was just really the um, decoy attack to draw the police attention over there to where they could hit DeVry Institute and kill up to 14 students while changing classes with a backpack of explosives. Just like they used at Centennial Park and um, Moorside Family Planning Services that morning. They were going to use the same thing there at DeVry, and if they couldn't hit DeVry, well, they were going to go to the Hubble School where Pace Academy is located at today and hit it.
Right.
But when they got to DeVry, campus security was already on alert and on lookout, so they couldn't go there. When they got to the Hubble School, and there was a two police cruisers and what we call a paddy wagon, a van, um, there in the parking lot, you know, of the Hubble School. So there was pointless for them to go up there where West Paces Ferry turns right and go up into Vinings up there, where the Home Depot corporate headquarters is located. Uh, and set out explosives at that Jewish school because they figured if the right had already been alerted, the Hubble School had already been alerted, they wasn't going to take a chance and go over there to Vinings and possibly get caught by Cobb County. Because again, those boys was always scared of the Cobb County Jail. Main reason why um, back then the old Top of Cobb jail was worse than prison, and even the jail today is worse than prison, rougher than prison. And people that go that particular jail think that you've been, doing stuff with children. Um, they will actually kill you. So of course they had a couple of buddies that had been convicted of statutory rape and child molestation that almost got killed, and they became some of the guys' girlfriends. Let me put it like that. Black guys at that, and that was their biggest thing. Isn't as much, and if it had been a Caucasian guy or you maybe Hispanic, but they did not want that coming from anyone of African descent. They just dreaded that thought. So that's their number one terror of Cobb County
See,
Jail. That.
see, this list goes on and on too, with so many people with the what you call the Apple Dumplin Mafia. I mean, it goes nationwide and probably worldwide.
Well, I call them the Apple Dumplin Mafia because of their screw ups. You know, they were going to set me up September 11th, 1996. That was supposed to be my 9/11. Um, First wife of suspect Mike Cook of Murphy Building Supply wound up stabbed in the legs. I supposedly had gone up there on a motorcycle, not my work truck, but a motorcycle, um, and knock on her screen door and ask her if I could borrow her telephone. And when she refused, I got upset and forced my way through the screen door with a knife, and stabbed her in the legs a couple of times, but she managed to fight and kick me off and defend herself. And I was so wimpy and scared that I went running outside. Um,
Yeah, that guy had really good eyesight to see your tag when it was really you were really at a different location, so many miles away. A
well,
lot.
yeah, it's
I
like
mean, he said your vehicle, and he's like, man, he's got some of the best eyesight around if he can
yeah.
see my
Well,
license plate.
I told him that even Motorola didn't have that kind of technology today. That one deputy over there at the Cherokee County Courthouse here about 6 months ago was over there making wisecracks about it. I was like, you heard much out of Mark Thigpen anymore? Well, we see him time to time. I said, yeah, you know what? Still, Motorola nor any other the fancy brands have been able to invent a device yet that can read a tag number over 80 miles away from here. Like old Mark Thigpen that late morning in September 11th there in 1996.
Superman couldn't even see that far.
That one deputy, he didn't know what I was
It is
talking
Superman.
about. That one deputy, he knew exactly what I was talking about.
Yes.
And he just kind of cut his eyes at me when I told him that. The other deputy, he didn't know. He didn't know anything about it, but yeah, I tell people, yeah, people, even modern technology's not been able to do that. You know.
Yeah, when you were talking about earlier how the microfiche changed, like in 1984, I can remember I had my youngest around 1984, and then when I went like a year later, said, "Can I have a copy of my medical records from there?" Right.
Right.
This was after I had to have the hysterectomy, and after that's when he had told me, after that hysterectomy about how much damage that I got and how much scar tissue. It's like none had been removed, and he worked 8 hours on me, and then he had to quit because I started bleeding too bad. But he said
Hmm.
it's like none of them been removed. But anyway, I wanted to go back and try to get the proof of that, at the doctor's office. They said it's now on microfiche, so we had trouble putting your files over there for microfiche and copying it. And I'm like, then why did y'all change over if you're unable to give a patient a copy of their records? Well, you put it on microfiche where they can't get a copy. I said, this is something screwed up.
Hmm. Yeah, that's why I'd like to sometime get a chance to go down there to Naples, Florida, and go to their county library and try to pull up their old newspaper articles because that's where you find them at. When you want to find old newspaper articles and newspapers, you always go to the county library and look it up on the microfilm.
Oh, yeah.
John Ramsey invented there with Polaroid, and
Right.
see if I can find that newspaper article from 1969 because that would really rub it into the Bentleys, trying to do what they tried to do in 1972 and 1973.
How many
Uh,
articles are you going to find of the barn burning? Catch a
well,
fire.
this is about the ice cream truck driver and that 5-year-old girl down there in Naples, Florida.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we don't have to look for it about the burn barns. You can pull that up on um Google search. The
Yeah.
Marietta
But
area.
there's some that's been blocked, so I'm sure there's more fires than what they have on the line. So I'm wondering how much more would be there.
Well, anybody that's lived in Marietta for any significant amount of time and have driven the 120 loop on a daily basis, we would be able to help but notice, this one barn that had caught on fire about 8, 9 times, before finally burning down one night and being replaced the next morning. I mean, these people, they never cease to amaze me. They got, you know, before they blocked off Bickley Lake Road and you drove down it, they had out these arson control signs on watch for arson and all that, so, you know, oh, it bit me. If you ever want to burn another barn, go out there and burn another one, and of course, blame it on the community.
And you
But
need you need to go ahead and go to. I wish some of the fans were watching this and they go on over there to that property and have the cadaver dogs that would pinpoint and mark the spots where there had been dead bodies and see what kind of finding out that they could do before they dispose of all that evidence over there on that property, right?
right. Well, even with removal, I don't think they'll be able to remove the signs of composition from the soil itself, soil samples.
Isn't it kind of weird how even though how can a brick building really burned all the way down, and they really had to tear that down. It didn't
Well,
really all the way burn to.
it was part of the court settlement, that they would destroy those structures, the red wooden barn, which it wasn't so red, at that time like it was years earlier, but um, you know, that one house, and of course both of those concrete stables that was built there. Anyone from Marietta, my age, will remember them, and older, of course. Everyone that ever drove out the 120 loop would have remembered them.
So,
And concrete
when did,
staples
when,
just don't burn down.
is that when
Or does
they?
anyone go out and want to destroy their concrete stables? You know.
Yeah, is that when they actually went and destroyed that fencing along with it? And did they ever put that wooden post back up around the fencing for the horses, or do they have it differently now than what they used to have it, or what?
One more time.
Because I know Miss Summerford, that's over there with Ed Bentley Jr.
Uh-huh.
She's got horses over there that we know twice since she's lived on that property that barns had caught fire. But both times, horses were not in the stables, which was kind of weird at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Them not to be in the stable, if you know what I'm talking about. Because usually that late at night you have them put up in the stables.
Well,
But
let's just think about a lot of people in Marietta have been afraid to talk about this stuff because they know what the capacity they could do to them. They take them and they create any charge they can or provoke them into committing a charge that they can charge them and convict them for and kill them while they're in custody.
yeah, and
Uh,
it's kind
run
of
their
and it's
the
kind of crazy how you still keep being harassed. You and Eric Kiss as well, with just y'all being on the property, and then a cop saying that, yeah, we had speculation trying to, do this certain thing, suspicious vehicle, whatever. And
yeah.
the only
Now there's
suspicious vehicle was a police vehicle.
yeah, and now here they are being sued by Mr. Kiss, and looks like he's about to go ahead and just due to the pattern of conduct and stuff that he has suffered out of law enforcement, you know, previously in Hall County. Well, looks like some of those, the sheriff and some of them are about to be added to his lawsuit. And of course, the rest of the terrorists, and if he's going to sue them, well, he might as well sue everybody we know is involved, including John Ramsey, you know, because if John Ramsey and Ed Bentley Jr. are untouchable, we got a problem, major problem.
You got that right.
You
And how
know,
are we supposed to
we're
really?
these wars and conflicts. I don't care if it's the L.A. riots, if it's over there in Gaza, all right, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan. Anywhere that we send artillery, munitions, and weaponry, these are the people that's making money off of it. Okay. So we cannot have world peace with a bunch of lunatics out there profiting off of wars, banking, and finance. Who are the ones responsible for these crimes against humanity? Because we're not just talking Arthur Blank, okay, Jeffrey Epstein, Ron Brill. You're talking people like Larry Fink, um, you know, Les Wexner, you know, and a lot of these big so forth called Jewish businessmen and, you know, uh, movie producers and, you know, because these people, they have no limits to the crimes that they will commit. So we don't know which country we're justified to go in war with. All right, if they control the media, they control the manufacturing uh, of the armory for these wars. All right, they want to wipe out 2/3 of the world population. It's just that plain and simple.
Right.
Um, but
Hey,
it's stated
Charles.
on their guide stones before they had them destroyed, intending to build a new set to where they could start their new era and reign of terror that they intend to start again.
Hey, Charles. You know what's scary to me? The other day, I was doing a live and I did some where you could go and self help, and it showed all these things and numbers in Atlanta and everything. And I'm not so sure about contacting any of these in in the Georgia area for protection, a GBI or nothing. I said I just don't trust it. I'm sorry, I just don't. And it was so hard to try to put that out there for people to contact. You know.
Well, I tell you what, um, I know a lot of people have met some federal agents, okay, but I bet none of them have seen federal agents as worried as I have. When Ron Vinson of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, he was appointed as the chief investigator for Georgia over the Centennial Park attack. He worked out of the Cleveland field office there in White County and resided in Union County, Georgia. And he was he was a devout Christian in his work. A lot of people in the region, they don't like people who work for the GBI and all of that because of being renegades. You know,
Yeah, and we're not saying
but
that all GBI are bad. You know, there's got to be
yeah,
some good ones, but the bad thing is there's so much of the corruption that's going on that's around that they really need the regular feds to come in, not just the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, but also the top FBI agents come in there and clean out a lot of these states, such as Marietta, Georgia. I mean, over there in that area, you know.
well, he didn't even know that my picture had been posted on the wall at the White County Jail, even though the office for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, he worked there in Cleveland, Georgia. He worked a lot with, it wasn't just the White County law enforcement he worked with. And, he worked with all of, the law enforcement in that region of Georgia. You You're talking Rabun County, you know, Towns County on down to Hall County, and of course they have another GBI office in Athens, um, Georgia. But he covered all the whole territory, Gainesville, Georgia, and all that. I don't know how far in that they did, but you know, he lived less than a mile from, you know, my brother Fred over there in such as Georgia. Matter of fact, my first day part time at Electrolux, you know, the 23rd of July, after I had my little confrontation with, verbal confrontation with Mike Cook, I drove over to Such's and I wound up shampooing an area rug for Rhonda's wife. And they referred me over to their neighbors and they wound up purchasing a twin package vacuum system from me. So I never had anything but, you know, positive interactions with the guy. Um, um, I drove over there to his house the night of the Centennial Park attack after hearing it on the radio, and left him one of my business cards, with Radio Shack written on it, you know, but with his wife. But after getting drafted by Louis Freeh and Governor Jimmy Hunt on the 30th of July, 96. That's when I really became official in these investigations, because they postponed the Centennial Park attack from the 25th of July to my daughter's birthday on the 27th in
Okay.
a bad faith effort to set me up. And that's how I wound up drafted in over the investigations of the Oklahoma City and Centennial Park attacks.
And see, with that, I just want to say that you've been trying to get your title over there at North Carolina because Governor Hunt put you in as the what?
Appointed governor of the state of North Carolina. See, North
And so
Carolina,
they don't want to still adhere to that yet. You are supposed to be acting.
that's right. I've never been impeached. This has not made it up to the General Assembly yet to finish the term that I started on January 29th, 1998. The 25-year maximum agreement that we made with Murphy Build Supply expired on January 29th, 2023. The crazy terms that I came up with the cooks to get the hydrogen bomb surrendered to the FBI, I mean ATF, I completed. I have served on and off 5 years in the Cobb County Jail since they were so terrified of it. I went in and got felony convictions, um, in order to do it and build my case against their colleagues they didn't want to name in Cobb County, which I've already had a head start with, you know, Judge McLaughlin and, you know, Bill Hudson and, you know, many others in, you know, the county government. But they
Well,
didn't
like
want it. I've tried to get the names and identities out of their accomplices in Georgia state government, but they said that was not for them information for them to divulge to me. It's just as long as I get this child safety convention established and ongoing in North Carolina, since I've completed everything that I said I would do and survived without getting killed in that jail. Um, they're supposed to go and turn themselves in over
yeah,
there.
and see, this is he needs back in the office where he could go ahead and do these kind of things where he could you have that
Yes, and
sessions and all these people get arrested. That's what he's trying to do, y'all. And the state and the North Carolina's fighting them, and even when you try to go, some of the people in the feds and stuff like that are fighting you for doing it too. Am I right or wrong?
Well, yeah, it's I went from hero, and all of a sudden in 2013 I went to mud. And I had already made the steps towards starting what I was supposed to do toward the final steps of my agreement with the Cooks. And I had already challenged the police to a fight like I told them I would. Their Cobb County Police Department. That was part of the agreement. I told them this crazy things that I would do, being impossible to complete. And I've done every one of them. I married a woman from Peru, went down there and brokered Operation Predator with the Toledo administration for the Bush administration, like I said I would do. Got the death penalty passed for child rape in Georgia. Got that Megan's Law adopted into the Georgia Code. Got the evidence with assistance of one of their culprits, uh, John Mussolini, which I found out he had been lied to, is how he got dragged into the mess to begin with. So, you know, he helped me get Candace's diary that launched Operation Long Line and later Operation Child Safe Neighborhood. So I've done my damage in the child sex trafficking industry. Like I said, I would do. I fulfilled those promises.
But
Uh,
let's hope and pray that you get deemed to you what's supposed to happen and it gets restored. And these people do face their consequences on what they're doing.
well, yeah, there's everybody's wanting accountability, and that's why Donald Trump had a lot of support for the presidency. Was he's promised accountability. He promised it for the first term, and he didn't do it with Mike Pence in there as vice president. I tried to get proof to him that Joe Biden was disqualified as candidate for president of the United States, until this matters would have been cleared up with Hunter Biden, um, over his knowledge of these terrorist attacks and the homicide of John Benet Ramsey that he witnessed as well. Um, you
And
know,
it's sad to know that Hunter Biden was S8 as well, right?
that's right. There's you know any of the ones that went further after the Oklahoma City bombing, all right, that continue supporting or engaging in their terrorist attacks. Okay, they're not the ones that are immune from criminal prosecution. The ones that are immune from criminal prosecution are the ones who had a change in heart and assisted me in getting a hydrogen bomb surrendered. Those are the people that are immune from criminal prosecution, in addition to John Mussolini, um, for helping me. Well, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to get Operation Long Line off the ground. The people that worked at the courthouse in Marietta wouldn't have been able to find out about this, and he really, um, one, he wasn't in Boulder when John Bonet was murdered, but he had a lot of his friends who were in Boulder. Besides that bunch from Murphy, North Carolina, and these people were not the least bit happy about um, what happened to John Bonet when they were out there, like the bunch that I know from Murphy were, because we already know what they did when they came back.
Yes.
Uh,
Hey, Charles, we went over 2 hours.
uh,
Did you want to stop and we go? We got another time when you want to do it. another one.
Hmm.
But
We
yeah, we
can.
need to help pull for him getting over there in North Carolina. I think a lot of people in North Carolina need to speak up on this behalf, and let's try our best to get him over there.
Well, like I said, anyone who's these are my accusations. I intend to push in the courts in the state of North Carolina. All parties that we have mentioned, they're innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. Okay, they have they're out. They have their rights um, um, to be tried for the charges that I'm accusing them of, and um, I am I have no liability for any information that I release because it's all based upon personal experience, as well as supported by other victims and witnesses' testimonies.
Yes.
So, like I said, if you have a friend or a loved one who was injured or killed, okay, and by any of these people, whether it was in the, Charlie Chop Off, the Oakland County, um, the Atlanta child murders, um, Alphabet, we have the evidence to help get you compensation, including the Boy Scouts. Believe once we get it confirmed that Levi Frady was a Cub Scout, and I'm going to believe that's going to happen because I believe he was. Once we do that, that's even going to make certain that all the victims of the Boy Scout sexual abuse settlement is going to be able to attain, since some of these guys were major players in the sexual abuse in the Boy Scouts. And since it's all related, there's plenty of victims, and there's plenty of evidence for those victims. And um, I believe is the time, is the proper time to move. If um, I would like to support President Trump and making America first. The only thing that I disagree pretty much with President Trump on, or two things I do, is the support for Israel, and as well as um, whatever support that he may provide to the Ukraine, to Zelensky. Anything else besides that, I'm pretty much supportive on as far as the immigration, as long as it's not people that I'm hearing the truth that cases are pending in court. I think it should be the courts to hold up. But pretty much fighting immigration. He said he's going to shut down the child sex trafficking, and he does. It's really honestly, I believe it's because of influence of Elon Musk that's going around is the reason why he jumped in and supported his presidency, because Elon, from what I gathered out of Elon, um, he was sick with the stuff back whenever we discussed about it. I could imagine the way he is about it now. I know he's gone out there and has spent a decent fortune toward helping Donald Trump to get elected, and we need to appreciate that he's willing to go out and spend the money that he is and trying to get the exposure that he's trying to.
Yeah, I had to interrupted you around the 2 hour mark because usually you tell me, to always let you know when the 2 hour
Yeah.
passes.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I upset a couple of people because you were in the middle of describing something.
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Well, let me look over these questions real good and make certain that I've answered um, any questions anyone may have had. I hope that answers a lot of questions for everyone.
Did anybody have any question before we leave tonight? Yeah, I don't know where I had left you off whenever I said that. I just knew that you always tell me to let you know at the 2 hour mark.
Hmm. Well, that's fine. Yeah, I do have other stuff I'm working on. We're getting ready to. Um, I got some stuff I'm about to start filing in courts, also in Georgia, clear up a lot of matters. And Mr. Kiss, he's got a case in the federal court system now that he's about to present some evidence. This
Right.
evidence in.
And we
Is
discussed that we wanted you to come on at least once a week, to keep everybody notified on some things, and because a lot of people love to hear you talk, and they
mm,
love finding out more and more because you hold a lot of knowledge, what they want to hear. You know what I'm saying?
well, yeah, and I appreciate that. And it's like when I used to ask people, in business, as long as I do a good job for you, and you know, not charge you an arm and a leg and do a good, excellent job for you, you're gonna put out a good word for me. Well, that's the same thing here. Since that's what I've been trying to do most of my life, will you put out a good word for me? Because I need this word over to the victims of the Oklahoma City bombing and the Centennial Park attacks, because there's plenty of people out there that are due more compensation than what they've received.
Right.
Uh,
Like my friend William, his fiance was murdered over there in Oklahoma.
that's right. Her family needs to, um, get in touch with me where they can get some compensation for her loss. I know there's the amount of money that can, you know, replace her, but that money they could put toward a scholarship fund or something in her honor, and do something really good for you know someone else's adult child that's ready for college. Um, you know, um, if they don't need the money for anything else.
Right.
Maybe even those who survived the attack, the children who survived that attack, and the impact that it had. And, I really don't think there was anyone that they really were able to sue to get just compensation for, what they suffered, and they deserve it. And we deserve it to happen too, because the evidence we have helps them. And I'm confident there's evidence that they have that we can pay that can help us. Um, that goes for Mrs. Lacey, I believe is her last name, of that police officer um, who responded that day that wound up murdered. I know that she deserves just compensation, her and her children, for the loss of their father and her husband.
Right.
And, you know, there's people out there that deserve this evidence. So anyone can feel free to visit my, Facebook page, um, and contact me through that. I will probably get in contact with the Traveler Spreads Truth Patriot group again and let them know that I can come back in and give them some updates. And I'm certain that they're looking for that too. But anyone else that wants to check out some of the documentations to this that are on Telegram can also go over there um, to that forum and find some of the documents over there.
Yeah, so make sure at Telegram, if y'all have that, to add him to Telegram as well.
And
Or
but anyway,
travelers, what's that name for the travelers again? The full name?
the traveler spreads truth, patriot.
Okay, the Traveler Spreads Truth Patriot. If y'all have got Telegram, please add that. They do question different people at times, and Charles has spoken there. I have spoken there, so I highly recommend y'all to add them if y'all want to know truth facts.
Mm. Yeah, they really research the stuff that they put out there um, about the government um, and we're at the time that I'm about confident is, it's like we always said, you got your good FBI, you got your bad FBI, you got your good CIA, you got your bad CIA. Well,
Exactly.
it's the same thing else as anybody that works in government. You got the good people that work in it, you got the bad people that work in it.
Right.
I'm about confident now that the good people that work in government are fed up having to deal with the bad ones that are working in there. So it's a unique timing right now, especially as we're watching this stuff out there in Los Angeles and all these protests. Is we need to be putting America first, and foremost, we need to be putting our nation's children first.
Well, I heard it's done spread to Georgia now.
Yeah, and it's coming up to North Carolina, and
Yeah, you need to be in North Carolina when it hits too, where you can
get there.
take your rightful place. You know.
That's correct.
So
So,
we're pulling for you, Charles.
well, thank you, and I appreciate your support, and everybody have a wonderful evening. And um, we could try to do another one next week. I'll let you know before the weekend what day would be best for that to happen.
Yeah, I was going to go away on. It's going to be gone Sunday, but it looks like I'm not going nowhere. So maybe run down to a quick trip to take somebody some supplies, a little bit of groceries, and then I shouldn't even be gone overnight or anything.
Mhm. All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Miss Clark, and everybody have a wonderful day.
You too. God bless you. Thank you,
Thank you too.
and thank you, Eric. Thank you,
Uh,
everybody
he,
that's listening.
yeah, he had some other things he had to do, but I'll let him know that you thanked him.
Yeah, and like I said, I could not get all the Apple Dumpling Mafia on here because it goes into probably the thousands of people. Okay,
Well,
there's
that's
no
the
way to put all the picture of the Dumpling Mafia on it.
well. I know if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't appreciate that name again either. That's what I was calling, you know, Joey Davis and Eric Rudolph. We part of the cornbread mafia. It's cornbread mafia, more like the apple dumpling gang, really. So I figure that's why I give them a, pick on them on that again. Get once they hear this up in North Carolina, that, yeah,
I look for a
uh,
time that they are telling their stories about them hurting a kid, and then they're actually crying about it. Because now they got to face the repercussions
hmm
and have to pay for their crimes that they done.
yeah, yeah, it's sad. Well, again, everybody have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thank you so much. God bless. I have got my book listed in my bio, my newly book. It is One Living Hell version 2.0. Thank you, everybody. God bless.